This episode, Grant and Garrett Frazey from the Blue Collar Business Podcast. Well, we got contacted by Grant and Garrett. They are super good young guys. We decided we would have them on, and we're going to talk we're going to talk podcast business, but we're going to talk handyman and contractor business as well. Welcome to the Handyman Pros radio show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros radio show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation on your home maintenance and repair. This edition is entitled Grant and Garrett Frazey from the Blue Collar Business Podcast. And to help me explain, I'm here with my ever cheerful co-host and old buddy, Johnny. Johnny?
Yeah.
Give me 5 seconds worth of story. You got to have something in that mind of yours. You've been working on the house.
You know
something.
What? Okay, I'll give you a few seconds. I replaced all those stairs going down to my basement, and I'm just working out a few little kinks in it, and they're just as they're settling in, even though they're 1-inch oak, and I've got about an inch, I think about an inch, something like that, overhang the nose. And you put weight on that, things will even at 1-inch oak will flex,
It's called moment, right, Johnny?
Yeah, it's called moment. All right. And I'll tell you what, there's just a few, there's no squeaks. Hey, thank goodness. And I got rid of those. Those are the things, but there's just, where they're just, it's kind of scraping against the side of the skirt, and it's kind of going crack, and then doesn't do it again for a while. But as the humidity changes from the floors going down to the basement. Anyways. Enough of that. But it's almost all figured out. So
he's got it almost all figured out. All right,
all figured out.
Before we roll into our interview with Grant and Garrett, we just want to remind you to please like and subscribe to our show, as it helps the algorithms to find more people that are interested in home maintenance and repair like y'all are. So we appreciate that. All right, here's our interview with Grant and Garrett. All right, well, we're here with Grant and Garrett. Hey, guys.
Hey, hello.
All right. Well, so you guys run both a handyman service and you have a podcast on helping contractors get more business and do better business things. I thought we'd start with some questions about your contracting business, just so people can get to know who both of you are and what it is that you do. So I'm going to just let you guys do it at your own. You can start with whichever. So introduce yourself and tell us what you do on the handyman / contractor side of the business.
I'm Garrett. I have a handyman remodeling business that I call Frazey Renovations and Repairs. And I live in Chandler, Arizona, a little bit outside of Phoenix. Grant lives in Gilbert. We're like 15 minutes away from each other. So my business, I focus mainly on like what you traditionally would think of as a handyman. Like this week I was hanging fans for people, fixing just odds and ends around the house, patching drywall. So I did end up doing a lot of jobs like that are just a couple hours here and there. And I say, like, in my branding, it's handyman and remodeling services, but I found that the last year or so I haven't done a lot of remodeling type work, but I'm okay with that. Grant, what would you describe your business as?
Yeah, I also do a lot of handyman work. I was fixing a leak this week just on the PVC pipe going to some sprinklers. But I also like to do, or I feel like I get more kind of renovation work and carpentry type work. I do, like this last couple of weeks I was working on a built-in bookshelf, and I just buy some cabinets and like trim it out on the sides. And so I do some more carpentry work and some larger projects, but I also do a lot of like drywall and smaller stuff like that.
Yeah. So you guys are, you're kind of fall into what we call the traditional handyman kind of jobs. You have a skill set that's pretty broad. You're doing plumbing, you're doing drywall, do you do any electrical at all?
Yeah, both of us do.
Yeah.
Both
small
of you do.
stuff, yeah.
Small stuff. Yeah. We're not light electricians, but we know how to, wire stuff up and do things like that, change ceiling fans and do all that same kind of handyman type services, as we want to call it. The one thing is, so you guys are in your late 20s, which is exciting. So you are at the front end of the curve. You are the next generation of handyman, unlike Johnny and I, who are getting ready to, hit the eject button and go out.
Hopefully not too soon, Larry. Thank you very much. God.
You guys got
I got a couple years left. I can bug in.
But so what challenges, like, I'm really curious in what challenges as you new business guys that you guys have run into. What are some of the things that are like challenges in your business?
This is definitely true for me, probably for both of us, is I feel like we're both really good at the work. Like, we both really enjoy and we're really proficient at the repair and remodeling work itself, but we're not exactly businessmen. And so what I find hard is like just basic stuff like marketing. How do I get more leads? How do I get some more clientele? I've been doing it for 3 years now. Like, we've been doing this type of work for probably 6 or 7 years, but I had my own business I started 3 years ago. And so I still feel pretty fresh, and I'm still constantly figuring things out, trying to just run a business like a business rather than just kind of pick up jobs here and there. So that's my challenge.
Yeah, and I also say that I kind of challenge with, I've only been doing it for a year, like running my own business. And I still find it hard to get, like, I send in a bid, get the pricing right. And, by the end of the job, sometimes I'm not making as much as I've projected. So I still kind of struggle with that.
Yeah, pricing's a perpetual challenge.
Yeah.
We've found in our experience, pricing is a perpetual challenge for everyone at all times. It never changes. It's really a big one. John, I mean, John can add in on this one.
Yeah,
but
I would say just hang in there. It takes a while. You guys are gonna, it takes a while to figure these things out. There's no doubt about generating the leads. There is one place you can go. Our library of shows to help you do those kind of things. But I do understand your challenges, and I can empathize with this because we've all been there, whether it's in business or it's in our in this business now. But it's a journey to try to figure these things out. Also, that pricing is tough.
Time. Yeah, I struggle with time. That's my big one. How long is a job going to take? And what am I, even now, I mean, I've been doing this stuff for way too long. And I still struggle with time on a week-to-week basis. I look at a job and I think, oh, that's only going to take, this amount of time. And then I just basically start adding. I usually double it because I'm usually off at least that much.
I think, guys, I think that you're kind of right in the wheelhouse of where everybody is struggling. If you go on some of the boards, the professional handyman boards and things like that, and you're reading through that, one of the questions that always comes up is, quotes versus estimates versus pricing, and how do I make money? How much you guys charge for this? And it's like, I don't really know. I can tell you what I do, but you kind of got your own market.
Yeah.
We're not in a commodity. We're in a market, which is, your market. It's in Chandler, right? You probably work mostly in Chandler or Phoenix area there.
Phoenix in general, yeah.
But I used to go out to Chandler all the time because I work with the guys out at Intel at the plant there.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. If you've ever been in that place, it's quite a... Boy, it's quite a scene inside there. Let me tell you. Anyways, that's for another day.
Yeah, never been.
There's a lot of characters in there. Let me tell you.
A lot of characters right here. What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah. So, but I think that, we can talk about some of those things those are the typical challenges. I mean, I do it, but not, now it's kind of like I guess it's kind of the repetitive thing. And then when you look at a job, right? So let's say, for instance, you got a fan, you're just replacing the fan. Right now the fan's working. It's just, I don't like that old thing. And, all the switches, everything works. And you pretty much know what you're going to charge because it's going to take you, 45 minutes or an hour to replace that thing, right? Whatever it might take. But then there's other things like Larry is kind of, we alludes to a lot of times, is it's a journey, right? It's an exploration.
Yeah.
And then it's very hard to say, hey, how am I going to make, how can I quote this? How can I bid this when I don't even know what the hell's behind the wall after I got called out and water's leaking? I don't know how many studs have to be replaced. I don't know it's like.
But that's the trouble being a handyman too, is it's like a new project every day.
Like, well, that's kind of one of the benefits.
And that is one of the,
right?
Yeah. And that's one of the exciting things.
To be consistent on pricing, because it's like, oh, this is a whole new thing I got to tackle.
Yeah. So you guys also do a podcast, and I want to touch on this because part of these things that we're like talking about are things that I'm seeing are partially in some of your podcasts. So tell me about the podcast a little bit. Start off with what's the name of the podcast and what is the goal of the podcast, and then I'll ask you a question on why did you decide to do the podcast as well. So those three things, if we start off. So the name of the podcast is
Blue Collar Business Podcast.
And your stated goal is what?
I feel like our goal is to motivate people to start their own service businesses, be it handyman or something else.
Yep.
That was like my inspiration for the show, because before I started my handyman business 3 years ago, like that never crossed my mind as an option that I could like run a business and work for myself. Like I was like, oh, that's not for me. Like that just felt so impossible. But now that I've done it, I'm like, it's not that hard. Like in some ways it's not that hard. And I think some people don't even see that as an option. We want to like motivate people to see, like we say on the show often, like if we can do this, anyone can do this, like in a way. Like if you have the skills, like it's worth trying, because it's been so cool for us to see and to learn and to grow and to be able to run a business. And I just didn't think it was possible before.
Yeah. And like I've only started my business like about a year and a half ago, and I kind of just saw Garrett doing, like he made his own business, and I'm like, oh, I guess I can do that as well. I mean, I was doing this kind of work before, but I wasn't working for myself, so kind of took inspiration from him.
I mean, and those are great stories, because John and I, we've been as a combination of, I've had many businesses over the years, and I remember back to being in my early 20s when I started, and I'm like, other people can do this. I know I can do it. I had great confidence in the ability to do it. What I found is it's a very different mental state than being an employee, as it were. I'm sure you guys probably work a lot longer than what people see you working, right? So as we call it billable hours, basically, right? The work that you're doing, the actual physical work you're doing, is not, I don't know what your time frame is, but for us, it's probably 3/4 of the total time that we take. We spend a full 25% over the top of that, just organization, setting up the calendar, making sure you've got materials. There's a whole lot that goes into it that people don't see that happens on the back end or the front end, either way, just depending on which side you're working on it. But there's all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? So you guys have just said, I love, well, my brother's doing it, I can do it, right? And
right.
And on the other side, it's like, well, I can do this. Or you find out that as you do it, it's like, oh, it's not that it's hard, it's just different, right? It's a different thing, and there's some different skills that go into it, and it takes a little bit of there's some challenges to starting a business, but once you've done it once, and especially if you achieve any success at it, you basically can go at it again. A lot of it just is analysis and figuring out what you need to do. And once you have that formula, and it's not a formula, it's not really the right word, but once you know, like getting business, once you know how to get business, it becomes pretty easy. Relatively easy. One thing I'll caution, I do some mentoring with some younger people here in Atlanta, and they're in similar businesses. One, my star right now is in the trash business, and he's doing really, really well. But one thing I'll just tell you about that: business is cyclical. It's up and it's down, it's up and it's down. And he gets freaked out when business slows up, and then he's like, so he markets, and then he's slammed, and then he doesn't have time to do the marketing. So then he gets slow again, and it's this up and down cycle, right? And so trying to get consistency is key. And it'll come. It just takes a while, and you have to go through the cycles to kind of understand that it's cyclical. That's just
but that is
advice.
one of the things, Larry. I'll just add this. That's one of the things about business that you try to smooth out is that sawtooth of business, no business. And that's just keeping, like we always talk about off the air, basically, but a lot of times it's a pipeline, and it's tough to do, as you're in business, when you're just starting out, you're kind of a one-man band, and you gotta, so there's a lot, everything occupies a lot of time, and you're juggling a lot of balls at once. So, it's easy to drop the balls on certain things. But anyways, you're learning, I was listening to your podcast, and I thought it was very open, very honest of, how things were going, how you were, your experience. I can tell that you're going through this journey of, doing your own thing. And it's exciting. The major benefit is that the destiny's in your hand. It's in your hands. It's not in somebody else's. I've been on the other side. I've been on the other side of things, and done very well. But the people on top have dropped the ball, and that affected all of us. So take that as what it's worth. But but when you're in business for yourself, you're the man.
Yeah, it's relieving, but it's also feels like a lot of responsibility sometimes.
It is. It is. And I think one of the things, and Larry can talk about this too, is that there's a point in, there's many different points in business that you hit, but when you're young, you're just getting your feet under you. It's exciting. You're doing your own thing. You're making some money. You're getting some business. You're doing, growing the business. And then all of a sudden it's going to be like, okay, I got a lot of business. I don't care what you do. I don't care what you do, whether it's the handyman contractor, you're selling, candles. I don't care. It's just, all of a sudden you're going to hit that mark, and then that becomes another, issue. There's, along the way.
It's a different set of circumstances, right?
Yeah.
It's very much like one of the steps you'll get to is right now you're still in kind of this bit of I call it more or less a startup phase, where you're going to fill your schedule, and you will get to where your schedule will fill up if you do I hate to say the basic things, but if you take care of your customers and you are good at communicating with your customers, your referral network will start to work. Has that started happening with you guys yet? Do you get a lot of referrals or not?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I feel like the snowball is rolling, and it's gotten a lot. Like since I started, it's most of my incoming work is referral based, so that's cool. But it's still like as you're describing, at some point you get to the point where you're just like swamped with work, and I'm not there yet. I'd love to be there.
Yeah.
Here's my point to that is that it happens, and it can happen very quick.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you might be able by yourself to overcome that, and you kind of come down the hill a little bit, and all of a sudden then the next hill gets bigger and then bigger, and it gets hard to turn down the business when you say to yourself, boy, that's a lot of opportunity, but I can't get to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sure. And you don't want to drop all these balls you're juggling all the time, whether it being going out, looking at new jobs, invoicing, doing your accounting, all the other back end stuff. Larry, would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. And one thing I want to say is, so there's this guy who's sitting over here talking to us right now. His name is John, and he has this great statement. He says, be careful what you wish for, because it might actually become true. And that carries its own information. You say you want to have your schedule full, and you'll get that schedule full, and after 2 years you'll be like, man, I wish my schedule wasn't so full. But it is part of, to John's point, there are these stair steps, and the first step that you're at right now is getting up to that full schedule, or a schedule that you're comfortable with, I should say. But there'll be a point where if you want to work my advice would be work 5 days a week, and your sixth day, meaning Saturday, is hopefully a half day that you do overflow work on, things you didn't get to or jobs you didn't get done, because part of that is part of that scheduling thing too. But then comes the thing where if you get into, and John's talking about, you'll get an opportunity at some point in your business career where you'll have this ability to do like I'll call it a large scale contract or a large scale project that is something that has long-term ramifications, meaning it'll literally be work for the next 4 or 5 years, something like that, regular work for the next 4 or 5 years. And how do you juggle that? Do you need to hire an employee? Do you need to do, you guys have a great advantage, like John and I have. You have each other to ask, which is a great start, because there's plenty of jobs, and even on a per job basis, and you've probably already experienced this, but you've got a job and sometimes you just need 2 guys. I mean, sometimes you're doing, I don't know, Johnny, what's the last job we worked on together? We were hanging siding or something, I don't know, but we needed 2 guys, and I was like, Johnny, what are you doing on XYZ date? And he's like, nothing, let's do it. So away we go. So you both have this automatic person that you can rely on because you're related to each other. And John and I have known each other for too long. And so we've got each other to rely on, but that's a huge advantage. You just don't have, I don't know if you realize that yet.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge advantage because it's going to allow you to do jobs that other people might not be able to do. I mean, literally, as a single handyman, it's kind of hard to do. I don't know. There's just
certain things that you.
There's just certain things
it's also like Larry's saying, if it's a long thing, a long job, a big job, because I think Garrett, I think you were saying that you were doing some remodeling. Or you had some of that. Is that some of that work is weeks, if not a month long, and to me, as an old sales guy, I get too bored. I just like to get through jobs quicker. But if I was working with somebody on the job, it makes it a lot more fun, and and you're getting things done quicker, and you're seeing the progress. But you will get to the point where like Larry was talking about, you get to the point where there's a business. We just talked about this, Larry, the other day. There's a business changing event that can happen.
Yes.
And just wait for it. When you see it, you'll know what it is. When you get that opportunity, you'll know what it is. For instance, you might get a big contract with somebody, or there's a big, like Larry was saying, you might get something that's years worth of work or a year worth of work.
Yeah, you might have a customer. I'm just going to throw out a scenario, right? You might have a customer you have a handyman customer, and you're doing work in his personal home, but he's the manager of. I'm going to use that Intel that Johnny was just saying. He's the property manager for Intel, and he needs a handyman to come out every 3 days a week for the next. He wants to put somebody on contract that he can trust, and you're doing work at his house, and he's like, dang, you do good work, because he has going to know what he's looking at, right? And the next thing you know, you're going like, wow, I just got 3 days worth of work for basically as long as I can keep the work. Now what do I do with the rest of my customers? Right. Yeah. Like you have those kinds of, and that's how some of that stuff, that's how it develops. Like you can go after that kind of business too, but sometimes it just comes to you. You don't even realize it. And the next thing you know, you're like, wow, okay, now what do I do? It literally is a now what do I do kind of thing.
And I think I would also say, guys, one of the things that you're going to hit in this thing as it unfolds throughout your life, is the issue of hiring people. And so that's a whole nother saga. And that is that's the make or break of business too. You're going to find out, being in business is not the hard part. It's the help that'll kill you. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth, but we know what that's like.
We do. Both Johnny and I have had people working for us. So.
You guys don't have anyone work for you now, right?
We do not.
No.
At the current time. Yeah.
No. So, and that is by design.
Yes.
Because we don't, we're kind of on, like Larry said, of course, Larry's further on the backside of things than I am. But we're just, we all often talked about, if we were in our 30s, getting our contractor's license, and then, just being able to do the things that we do and treat people the way we do, it would have been full on. But at this point, I don't want to deal with any more employees
of that.
Any more of that.
But like I said earlier, you guys are in a great position going forward. If I were your age at we're doing what we're doing right now, I mean, it'd be game on.
Yeah.
I mean, we would be, I mean, if and John and I had even, give us a few years down the road from where you're at, meaning if we were again in our early 30s, we would have created probably a very respectable business. I don't know how else to describe it. It would have been quite a bit more than just us working as independent contractors, just going out and doing jobs like we are now, because we enjoy this work. I mean, I enjoy this work. I know John does too. We enjoy the work part of it. It's just some of the other things that I just don't want the hassle. The extra money doesn't matter to me right now to have an employee. It just doesn't. And anytime that I just need, like if I have a job that I need help, I call John. I have a couple other people that I can call too for specific type work. So we have that networking set up, and I would tell you, build some networking. One of the great places for generation of new business is to talk to other people in the trades. And John and I have done this with several people, but like plumbers and electricians are good ones. They love to go cut holes in walls and then not put the drywall back.
Yeah. Yeah. So Grant, when you're doing a lot of drywall work,
yeah.
So that's a place, that's just one place that's a source of referrals. And most of those guys actually love having a handyman in the retinue, because there's just sometimes, even for electrical jobs, like, yes, they'll go out and they'll hang a ceiling fan, but they really don't want to, because it's not like an electrician's not, I mean, yes, he can do it and he'll do it all day long. He's going to be more expensive, and they lots of times just don't want to do that kind of work. They're kind of like, I want to wire, I want to do more technical work kind of thing. So we always tell people that's, have a good network, find people that you like working with, and send them some business every once in a while too. When you got a job that requires code or something like that, if you're not licensed, we send business to guys for code work. We send it to people all the time, because we're not licensed in anything. And Georgia's, we live in Georgia, so Georgia's pretty, how do I want to say it? You don't need much in the way to be a handyman, but you do need a lot to be a plumber, HVAC, electrician, whatever, licensed guy. So, and each state's different. So,
yeah.
Do you have any questions for us? I mean, I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, I was thinking as you're talking, like I said, I've been doing this for 3 years. I want to make it more of like just a well-oiled machine, if you will. And but I'm just having challenges doing that. So like, if you were in my place, like where would you start? Because like yesterday I was
let's say this. What are those challenges?
Yeah, get more specific.
Yeah.
I'd say the biggest challenge is I just would like more leads than I have.
Okay. So it's all based on business. Is it lead generation, or is it actual closing of jobs?
Lead generation. I usually close pretty consistently.
Okay.
Yeah.
So both John and I have been professional salespeople. Okay. And when I say that, we've done is sell. And so both of us have been in what's called outgoing sales, meaning you basically get a list of names and it's, here you go, make it happen. Right. Mm-hmm. So some of the things, like I want to give you some really simple takeaways here, and we've done shows on these, but I'm going to do it again. The first one of the simplest things, and John will throw some things in too, but one of the big things that I can tell you, when you're starting off right now, when you go and do a job, and I don't care who the job is for, you send them a written thank you note with 3 business cards. that you put in that, and you send it to them in through the U.S. mail, and you actually spend the time to write up a thank you note and send it to them. And I'm going to ask you a question, and I know it's a simple question, but I already know the answer. How many thank you notes have you gotten from a customer in the past year? I mean, from a vendor in the past year?
0.
Exactly.
Would you remember somebody if they had sent you a thank you note?
Yeah, I'm sure it would.
Yeah,
You would.
Yeah.
And so for you, when you go and do a job, and this is something you can do, later today when you go do a job, especially on a new client, you don't have to do it for your older clients, although you could do it for your older clients since you have not done it, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
you just, if to an older client, you say, hey, I really appreciated doing the, whatever, fixing your sink today. I wanted to send you a note just because I really appreciate your business. I've been closed 3 business cards. If you know anybody looking for a job, I'd appreciate the opportunity. And that simple phraseology is just going to stand out in somebody's mind. And it's the same thing, it's like, hey, thank you so much. Really keep the phrases very, very simple, but hey, thank you so much. We really appreciate your business. We really liked your job. If there's anything else that comes to mind, please don't hesitate to reach out. And you send those thank you notes, and I'm telling you, you give it about a month of doing that, and you will start having referral business that comes to you because you're different. You're different from everyone else, and you're going to make that impression. And it's just a really simple process. That's something that really, really helps. And particularly today, you can send emails, but what happens with emails is today everybody gets so many emails, they tend to delete them quickly, but they don't delete the snail mail that they get. So
Yeah, you got to be different, right?
Different. It's being different.
Yeah.
And
the fact that you guys are twins is also kind of an interesting thing. Other than the hair, you're obviously twins.
Yeah. Well, I would also say that when you get done, and we were talking about this on an episode, I guess a month or 2 months ago, is that from a referral standpoint, after you get done, people say, as they pay you, hey, great job, thank you so much, and then you say, okay, I'm out of here. No, is there anybody else that that could use my services? Because now the momentum and that emotional high is right at its peak. Okay, they're at the emotional high for them at that point. After they say great job, when they say great job or thank you for the nice job and cleaned up and all that, blah, 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 you're at the emotional high, and that's when you hit them with anybody else. That's when you're going to get, I do, or I'll ask.
And I would add one caveat to that. If you in your conversations with them, if you find out that they're a member of a club or a church or
that too,
any kind of group, put that group idea in their head.
Exactly.
And add and say, hey, I was just thinking about it, and do it very kind of, you do have to practice at it a little bit. This is a little bit of sales psychology is what this is. But hey, I was just thinking, you said you're a member down at the local Moose Lodge. I'm just pulling that one out of my head. You're a member. Is there anybody down there at the Moose Lodge that might need something done? Because what that does is put a picture of of a set number of people in their mind, right? So there are, they've got, I don't know, say 15 friends at the Moose Lodge. So now they're looking at just those 15 people. And that can often, and they'll sit there and go, John down there was just telling me that he's got a whatever, and he, yeah, let me get a hold of him, kind of thing. And that's
interesting.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? It's just a little thing, but even with yourself, if you think about it, if I ask you kind of this, hey, do you know anybody that knows, or I say, gosh, is there anybody from your podcast that's reached out that wants service? All of a sudden you've narrowed that thing down and gotten really specific on a target, if we want to call it that.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things you can do. Are you doing so a different question? This is a marketing type question. Do you know who your customers are? Can you categorize your customers?
Yeah, I feel like I could. I feel like they're usually like probably 80% of my customers are like millennials and like middle class suburbs out here in Phoenix.
Okay.
And they're just wanting like a simple remodel of part of their house, or they just have a lot of things that they want to do, but they don't have time for it.
Okay. So you've got a kind of a picture in your mind of who this.
Usually their wives reach out to me.
I was gonna ask you that. Do you work for women? Because we find that we work mostly for women, right?
Yeah.
John and I both do. And at the end of the day, you have to keep the woman needs to be satisfied. It's just you'll do your. I'm not. That's not a misogynistic statement or anything like that. It's just that in most cases, mom's in charge, or not mom, again, that's me being old. The woman's in charge of the house, particularly like in my house, the inside of the house is my wife's, the outside of the house is mine. So I take care of all the stuff outside the house, and she takes care of all the stuff on the inside of the house. I do all the work for both of them, but she's the final word on the inside of the house. And and if you can work for the women, if you can make the wife happy, the wife or the owner of the house, whoever it is, I'm not trying to qualify it, but we find we work about, just like you, about 80% of the time it's for a woman. So you have to understand that, women have a different perspective than men do on particularly home improvement, and in some ways, some of these little things, like, I can tell you this for a fact, a woman appreciates a thank you note about 500 times more than a man does. Right? I mean, it will really make an impression on her more than it will on a man. And you probably know that. Just because you probably do, like, oh yeah. Hey,
well, I think, Larry, but, the other thing that if you've got this the demographic of who that is, yes, and you just said the neighborhoods and things like that, go check out, one of our episodes on Every Door Direct.
Yep,
in
I was
mail.
Just going to go there. Yep.
I remember that episode, yeah.
And try that. Okay, it might cost you $80 or $100 or whatever, but we're going to get back real quick to this business topic of you're going to create so much work. I guarantee it. Because listen, if you go through with a real nice little brochure and you're starting to pick up on your own marketing speak already, right? A lot of the folks they don't have time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's part of the marketing piece. You can send out this little one sheet thing. You don't have to open it up. It's just sitting in your mailbox. Yep, and it says save time. If you don't have the time, call so-and-so and we'll get. It's stuff like this that you're going to get a lot of callback. And if some of these folks, some of these places are like where I live, there's a lot of gated communities, so you can't go around and market. But guess what? The mailman can.
Yeah,
so, sure. That's just another thing. I think between the two, being referrals and then kind of, getting some air cover through the mail. I doubt you're going to have issues with leads. Just those two things. I mean, I don't know, Larry. If I did that, I'd be covered up.
I'd add two perspectives. One is I would be looking at Nextdoor. Anytime you can get a referral on Nextdoor, it's a good thing. You can get somebody to refer you on Nextdoor. And then the other one is there are plenty of Facebook groups if that meets your demographic, but some of the Facebook groups get really specific. Like they'll be in our area, there's a lot of HOAs that have Facebook groups, and now you can't publicly post on those, but if you can get somebody to post your name on one of those groups, you'll get through the whole neighborhood. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that happened to me a couple of weeks ago, and it was huge. I'm like, how do I make this happen again?
Yeah. And the thank you note, trust me, you send that person. You know what? I'll tell you this afternoon when you get done with the show, go write a thank you note to the person that posted you. Hey, thank you so much for the Nextdoor post thing. If you have their physical address, send it to them. They'll put it out there again. I almost guarantee it.
Yeah. Cool. And I'll just add from my experience, it takes a while to cut through the noise and hit the signal. Okay, so you got to separate that, and the signal is right where you just said that. It happened to me. Okay, and you probably, amongst all the noise that's coming through, that was the one thing that you need to continue to pick up on are those little things like that, and those are the high points where you do them again and again and again. And that's
figure out how to do them again.
Yeah.
Figure out whatever you did, figure out
that's what I'm saying. But that right there is the thing that stands out. Don't let that don't bury the lead on that. That is very important. That little piece that you just threw out there. So just be aware of those things for anybody out there that's trying to do, start a business.
Yeah. And this is to your point, like even on your podcast, you're welcome to share any of this information. We do not care. In fact, please do, because our goal is to help. We really want to help people succeed at the end of the day. Our moniker is to helping people save time, money, and aggravation. Well, that's the same thing with you guys helping you start your business. We want to help you save time, money, and aggravation. We've done a lot of it. I don't say we've done it all, but we've done a lot of it. We are weak in places we know, like we're not great on helping people get employees because we're just not in that mode anymore. We're in the past, but we're not there, but we're not great on that. But getting through some of this basic stuff is really important. Know who your customers are, like really know who your customers are, and have a good profile of your customer so that when you see your customer, when you quote, see your customer, you're talking to somebody new on the phone and it doesn't matter, but they match your customer. You're like, this is a really good fit, and tell them that, hey, this is a good fit, like we can do everything that you need. We want your business. Enthusiasm is a lot of it. I can't explain about being enthusiastic about doing a job is really, really important. Another just quick observation, you will get to a point where you will have a core of customers. Have you reached this point yet? Are you having people call you back every 3 or 6 months yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're getting
Figure out how to get more of those, brother, because they're really good ones. For me, that's the core of my business right now. And I mean, I go rolling from customer to customer to customer on a weekly basis. And it's like, and the other thing is you get to know their houses, like you kind of know, like, oh, okay, just for example, where the electrical panel is, where the water comes into the house. So somebody says, I've got this problem. You're like, you're not fumbling around going, where's your panel? You're like, oh, you just head to the panel, and you go do it. And it's like, I love working that way with my customers, and they don't have to explain to me where anything is. They just go, my outlet in my bedroom isn't working. Can you fix that? And I go, well, we'll go take a look, and away you go, because the house and where everything is and all that kind of thing. Those are great customers, by the way.
I was just going to say, so guys, on your podcast, and I've listened to a couple of episodes, so you're kind of walking through this. You're gonna keep this unfolding in that podcast. Is that what I just wanted to kind of give you a little plug there.
I think part of it is like we're just kind of sharing our journey through starting kind of like we started the podcast almost a little bit after when Grant started.
Yeah, I had just started pretty much.
So you're the guinea pig, Grant.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that. Yeah, I feel like I'm learning.
You're the case study.
The case
study. I haven't run into a lot of these things yet.
Got it.
But that has tremendous value for people, especially like you're saying. I like the fact that you're trying to do this for anybody to start a business, because it is one thing that I've found over the years is that it's not just for the trades. The trades have a lot of similarities. I don't care what trade you're in. If you're a plumber, you're an HVAC guy, you're a handyman, you're this, you're that, the number one success tips we can give are like, show up on time, clean up after yourself, and tell people what you're doing. You do those three things, you're already in the top 20%, period. End of story, right? I mean, show up on time, clean up after yourself, and have decent communication skills. Like, we're doing this, we're doing that, or whatever it is, right? And all those three things is sorely lacking in contractors in general, just in general. And I throw that out there. That's a challenge to all of my contractor friends in the world. Make yourself, quote, more professional, show up on time, clean up after yourself, do good work in there too while you're at it, do really good work. And you'll do good. One other quick little tip, I'm thinking about it just because it's popped into my head, but is do a little bit more than you get paid for. If you've listened to our podcast and I've told this story about fixing the guy's door, and he calls me up on the way home, and I think I've left a tool or something bad's happened. He's like, you fixed my door. It's been 20 years I've been trying to jiggle that door handle to shut. And I was like, and I made a customer for life, like
it's true. It's those little things. I was also going to say that you guys, as you're going through this journey and explaining it, it's good that you're reaching out to other people like us, and you'll get to know people on other podcasts and other YouTube channels, and I mean there's a lot of good wisdom that kind of circulates around now because of the way technology is these days, and you can take advantage of all of this, so I think that it should be a really good podcast for you guys, and for all the listeners out there to take advantage of. I mean, it's interesting to hear, if, for example, when we first started this conversation, and I found out that you just were getting into this business, or you've been in business for 3 years, and you're on your way. It's interesting for other people to understand how other people are going into business for themselves. Let me put it that way. Man, I'm not saying it right, but that's what kind of got me. Because there are places I don't really seek them out. But it is interesting to hear the real life stories of, hey, I don't want to work for anybody else. I want to work for myself. I'm 27 years old.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, but here I am. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't know a lot of people who are doing that. Like, most of my people that I know are working for big companies. So it's nice to give people an opportunity to hear our perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's these are, how do I want to say this? These are timeless stories. I ran into the same thing when I started on my path on being self-employed in my early 20s. And, it was really hard back in those days to just get a hold of, to find somebody to even give me any kind of mentoring advice. And when I mean anything at all, you had to, of course, this was pre-internet and blah, blah, blah. And you had to actually find some person. And that was a real challenge. Today, at least at least there's thousands of
There's an easy way to communicate with people around the world.
Yep. Very, very simple. And it's just a question of finding somebody, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, because we'll help you in any way we can. I do want to make one statement clear in the beginning. I don't count on a whole lot of revenue from the podcast world, because we haven't figured that one out yet. We're working on it. We think maybe. I don't know.
If there's any advice we can drop, any knowledge we can drop on you there.
Yeah. Or conversely, if you have anything that's going to help us, we would certainly welcome that idea. I will say the greatest advantage for us in the podcasting world is that it has really taught us, it sharpens the saw a lot, meaning it keeps us sharp, and it keeps us, because we effectively try to teach. And then also when we bring on, we've had some subject matter experts on, with a drywall doctor and things like that. You want to learn how to do drywall? This guy did, Johnny, how many millions of board feet was he doing?
He was doing it out in Phoenix.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
He was part of the crew that built that hospital out there. I think it was. I can't remember exactly what Ray was doing, but 8 million. There's some
board feet. Yeah.
Some crazy,
something like some nutso job,
But the guy's been in drywall. I mean, that's all he's done his whole life, is drywall. But these are the guys, right? I mean, I reached out to him and said, hey, I'd really like to talk to you. I subscribed to your channel and really enjoy it. And boom, next thing you know,
he changed my drywall life. I mean, I went from hating it to it's easy. Oh my God, it's so simple. Duh. But it was all of these little things. And now it's and I would not have learned that had I not been doing the podcast, because I would probably have never gotten to his station. And he was more than willing to teach, and we did 2 shows with him. And the first show was the one where he taught me this process. It's essentially a 2-step process. And dude, it works, man. It's oh, okay. But I've been doing it wrong all these years. That's what it was.
But the point is, it's easy to reach out to people these days. Don't hesitate to reach out to those people, because hey, ask for help, and people are like, hey man, I'll help you out.
I have a question. Have you had a customer that you've not had a good experience with?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, I think Happens. Yeah.
So explain that one. Just tell us a story.
There was one recently. This, in retrospect, I think this might have been on me. Like, I think it was a client that wasn't a good fit, and I didn't handle it great. But I was replacing like a door frame, and it was for this big door for their backyard. And they sent me a picture of it. It looked pretty straightforward. Like just changing out the framing, that doesn't take too long. But then when I got to it, some of the like inseam was like really whacked up, so I had to fix all that too. And when I was done, I was like, look, I had to replace this part too, and all this. And I didn't communicate that like once I saw it. I just communicated it after the fact, after I'd fixed it. And so I ended up doing 3 times the amount of work that I bid them for. And I told them all this, and I ended up charging them more than what I bid. But they were like furious that I charged more than what I said. But then I'm like, I think that's kind of my fault.
Well, there's a lesson learned, right?
Yeah.
And you take away, your takeaway there is, hey, if it's on me, it's on me. It's not gonna. I learned a lot from that because
Yep.
We were just talking about this before. You're going to get to the point that you're going to know what's an exploration and what's just kind of an easy thing to do. Hanging a ceiling fan that's already working, or changing out a faucet or whatever. But something like this, and you're kind of looking at it, and the new one's like, wait a minute, The explanation is, and I think Larry, you were talking about it earlier. Keep telling people what you're doing.
Right.
And be honest and say, hey, I got a kind of hard stop here where I'm running into a lot more work because of whatever. And if it's not your fault and you had to redo the whole inside frame or whatever the story is here, some of that could go a long way from an understanding perspective on both parties, because nobody likes surprises. And I think that's where So I think that's what I'm hearing.
Well, and the other thing I was going to say is, well, you've just had your first class in business dynamics of contracting, right? So you just paid for your first college course in contracting. A bit of advice. This is just a bit of advice from this never to be humbled handyman's position, is unless it's costing you actual materials, which I don't know in this particular case, but sometimes you just buck up and eat it, even if it took you 3 times as much. The key there is to do the takeaway and say, if it costs you hard money, that's one thing. I understand that. Meaning if you needed more materials,
yes.
But sometimes you just eat it.
You gotta take the L.
Yeah, and say I'm never doing that one again. And how do I work my way around that one, or not necessarily work around it, but there's just some things, because I was thinking you were going to tell the story of you take the door frame off and find that the framing around it is just rotten, like rotten. And oh, surprise, surprise. How do I know that?
Yeah.
Been there.
Yeah. Been done
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all of a sudden you're reframing a home because of water infiltration that's happened behind the walls that you don't see. And you've got this structural issue that's like, holy smokes, what the heck happened? Literally, we've seen that. Seen that, and there's some pricing strategies and things that you can do on that. We tend to, if we don't, for me, I'm going to speak for myself. If I don't have full transparency on something, if it's not really cut and dry, I always leave a little bit of a hedge in there. I always sort of just kind of tell them in advance, this is provided everything goes as smoothly as possible. When I get into it, I won't know until we get into it, because sometimes you just can't tell.
For instance, you're going to you might run into a situation, and this is for the audience that are listening too, because you have to kind of empathize here with the folks that are doing work. I mean, if you think it's let's say it's water, it's you got some water around the shower. You could be really opening up a can of worms. So, my take on these kind of things is like, I walk in, I'll give you my counsel on this. I'll start the work, but I am going to show you exactly, if it gets really nasty, I'm going to show you exactly what's going on here. And then it's going to be a full stop, and then I'm not out anything. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but you communicate that all up front.
Yeah, you constantly. But I think you kind of, for the folks that are listening to this, and you're getting into business, communication, like Larry was talking about earlier, communication is really a major key to be able to continually express yourself and have this communication with your customers. And I think that's one of the pitches that you have. Hey, I am going to tell you everything I'm doing while I'm doing it, or if I run into something, we're going to have a discussion. I think it's only fair. It's only fair on both sides. And if everybody understands that, like I said, nobody likes surprises. I think that's when you get into this. I quoted something in, I had to eat everything,
Yeah. And as night follows day, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. The flip side is, and this is just, again, this is born of experience, is when you do that and you live up to your contractual arrangements, you really build credibility with the customer from the standpoint of when they see what's happened, and you go. Now, again, if you're out materials, it's a different situation. If I was facing a situation like that, and say I had to put $200 extra in materials, I'm just throwing out a number, right? I would ask the customer. I said, look, I'm out. I'll give you the time, but can you pay for the materials? And people are pretty amenable to that for the most part, and they'll understand. But when I say it builds your creds, is they're probably gonna refer you. Now, when you go to quote the jobs that they refer to you, make sure you put a little extra money in it so that you don't end up in that problem again. But that's a whole, kind of another thing, because at the end of the day, you do have to make money in the business. But sometimes you just eat it because you said you were. It's called integrity. And again, that's in the contracting world, that's a negative, right? Because the story that you just told me is a story that every single person has had a contractor that's come back and said, "Oh, it cost me more than I said." Well, how much more? $400,000 more. I had a customer tell me that one time. I was like, "What?" Yeah, $400,000. And I go, "Well, what was your process?" He said, "Oh, they quoted me this price, and then they got halfway through and they go, oops, we made a mistake." And this was a tactic on their part. "We made a mistake. We think we're going to be about $400,000 short." And they're halfway through the project. The house is ripped in half, right? I mean, basically that.
Numbers there.
Right. So the guy, and the guy sitting there goes, "Well, what do I do? My house is in parts and pieces. I had no choice." And I'm like, yeah, and that's a bad experience, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's, again, I understand sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't. In a door situation, were you out any cash money on that one? If you had done the work for free.
I had to buy a few extra materials, but it was not that much. So
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's just a bit going forward. Just think about it that way, and also, but if you do get into those situations, get some referrals, like hound that guy. Say, I tell you what, I'm going to live up to my bargain because I made the bargain. Who do you know that needs work?
Yeah, always get something. Yeah, always get something for something. Yes. Always trade.
And then you mark it up and then you actually, in your books, you mark it off as a marketing expense because you lost money on the job.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
it brings up another question that I have. So are you using an accounting software?
No.
All right. So good business people know the numbers.
Yeah.
So I asked because my mentee, this guy I was telling you about, who is he forever is like, "I think I'm making money." I go, "I don't want to hear I think. I think is not the answer. I want you to give me a number at the end of the month as to how much you make." So and young guys tend to not do this, and that's no offense, by the way. It's a part of that business process. But get some kind of accounting. It doesn't necessarily have to be software, but come up with a system where at the end of the week or the end of the month or the end of the day, you've made X. And X needs to be all of your income minus your expenses equals a positive number.
Sure.
Okay. Does that make sense? Right.
Yeah.
So that positive number, one of your expenses is your labor. So you need to subtract out what your normal labor rate would be, like whatever you would charge for yourself. Like if, for example, if you can hire a guy to, I don't know, if you can hire somebody for $15 an hour, well, you have to bill your time at $15 an hour, right? If that makes sense. So, and I'm not saying that's what you should work for. I'm just saying that that's a number. It's an esoteric number, if you want to call it that, but you have to add that in, and then you have to be positive, because that's what business is. Business is, you've heard them called organizations. It's organizations.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nuances here, but just to get yourself set up, okay,
yeah.
and get yourself a system. Both Larry and I use a free accounting system that we use. It does the invoices and the quotes and all that stuff. But you need to get something like that. Otherwise, you're kind of flying blind.
Yeah, one of the other things that it will help you is if you find out. I'm going to use hanging fans, for example. Okay, so if you can hang a fan and you make $50, and you can fix a sink and you make $25, which job are you going to prefer?
Fans, for sure.
Fans, right? Yeah. There's
analysis here that you can do.
Yeah, there's an analysis. How can I get more fan business? How can I, whatever. There's a whole bunch of ways to do that. For me right now, my favorite way to do a job is I get all my customers to give me to-do lists, and I actually share them in my phone. So I'm getting a running update of what they're adding to their to-do lists, which is the coolest thing in the whole wide world for me, because I'm like, oh, I'm getting close to needing a day over here at this customer's list because their list is getting kind of long, and it'll either spur a phone call from me or they'll call me because they see the list too, because they know the list is getting kind of long. And so that's a day's worth of work for me. So I like going and doing a day's worth of work because I don't have travel time and I don't set up and break down twice and all the kind of the operational things that cost you money, whether you believe it or not. But that, for example, if you're doing hourly work, and you're driving to 8 stops to do 8 hours, wouldn't you prefer to drive to 1 stop and do 8 hours worth of work? Personal preference. Here in Atlanta, we don't like to drive because traffic is abysmal. So, we try to go to one place and work. But those are things that having good numbers allows you to make those determinations as to what works the best for you. So that's why I say it. It's very, very important to have a good type of accounting system. It can just be a good checkbook, but it's helpful with computers. It's so easy that you can categorize things into, my income or daily, my income categories are daily rate, job rate, hourly rate. That's my 3 categories. And for me, daily rate is my best. It's my easiest profit center. I'm going to call it that. It's the best one for me. Now, it took me a while to get there. I'm not going to say it. This doesn't happen overnight. But different question, have you walked into a home and seen a whole list of things that need to be done?
Yeah, I did that yesterday.
Did you point it out to the people?
A lot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just like door handles that are totally broken, random stuff like that.
Yep.
And what was the customer's reaction?
Yeah, they appreciate it because they were already showing me different things, and I'm like, well, also this, and they're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. So
yeah,
I think people appreciate it.
That's the thing. And people, you can't believe how long people will put up with stuff like that, and they don't even know. You just get too used to it, like like stuff hanging on your refrigerator. I didn't know. I forgot that thing's been up there for 15 years. Stuck on a magnet.
Johnny, that coupon expired in 1988.
Yeah. Well, Larry, we're getting up to almost we hit the hour here.
All right.
Oh, wow, we did. Okay.
We can continue this at another, we can have you guys come back. It would be great.
Yeah.
I think from a standpoint of, I'd love to listen to some more of your podcasts. I'd love to see the journey and what kind of things you're coming up against. And, we can have you back. We can be on your show.
However you want to do it.
Want to work it.
We're flexible. So
yeah, that'd be awesome. We'll definitely keep in touch.
Yeah. So it'd be great. All right. Well, I do have one question. So tell us about some crazy or unique job you've done, because that's always one thing we do when we do interviews. We want something. Do you have anything that's kind of off the wall?
Randy, got anything?
I mean, nothing comes to mind. Nothing too crazy. I feel like I do some kind of vanilla work, just remodel stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I used to flip houses. This is what I did before I started my business. And I mean, I ran into some interesting stuff, but it wasn't work I was doing. It was like I was watching some other contractors we hired do some interesting things. So I don't know if I have any good examples.
I have one. I had a client a couple months ago. They were, it was a mother-in-law's house, and she had to go into a retirement home. And so they were remodeling the house so they could rent it out. And I was there. I'd been working on it for weeks. I was there one night till like 1 a.m. and I saw like lights flickering in the kitchen, and I was like, oh, this is freaky. So I got out of there as fast as I could. And then I talked to them afterward. I'm like, I think I was working way too late one night and I was hallucinating, and I saw lights flickering in the house. Thought it was a ghost or something. And then the clients later were like, oh yeah, you weren't losing your mind. There's a ghost in that house.
Oh my goodness.
A gremlin at least.
That was a fun one.
The ghost.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah. We can't find the last guy who lived here.
That's it. You're going to find him in the wall.
Until you tore down the wall. Oh, there he is.
Oh, yeah, there he is.
If I want to go back to that one.
Oh, that's a good story. That's a good
story. Well,
story.
Guys, how can everybody get a hold of your show?
Yeah. Yep.
One more time.
You could look it up on Spotify, Apple, Blue Collar Business Podcast. There's another podcast that has the same name. We're the yellow one.
You're the
Blue Collar Podcast. Okay. Yeah. Got it. The yellow.
But that's the most of the major podcast platforms.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, what we'll do is after this, we'll hunt down the link, and we'll stick that link in our descriptions and stuff like that, so people can click on it and jump over to your podcast.
It'll be in the show description. We'll stick it in the show description. So
cool.
All right. Well, we'll get you back on because I think this was a great conversation. I hope you guys have enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
All right. And with that, we will see you the next time, and we appreciate it. We'll talk to you all soon.
All right. Thank you, guys.
I want to thank Garrett and Grant for being on the show. Johnny, what are some of our key takeaways here?
Well, it's this journey that I said during our interview with them. That's fascinating to me. Of watching a couple of young guys going through, being entrepreneurs, and they're in this handyman world and contracting world, and I think they're going to have a lot of success if they're going to keep going. It looks like that. Stick to it, and hey man, I wish them good luck, and I think that it's all going to work. I was just I think fascinated by just some of the stories that we had talked about and how they were going through this and the questions that they had. So they're very aware of the trials and tribulations of being in business.
Yeah. I mean, mine, same with me. And then I also like the fact that they're doing the podcast to help share their story and that they're learning from their experiences. It's really one of the biggest things whenever you start a business. Once you've done it once or twice, in my case, I've done it more than once or twice. It's kind of old hat, but when you're new, there's a lot of things that are really scary and a bunch of unknowns. So with that, I found that they're approaching it in the right way. They're asking the right questions. They've got some work to do, there's no doubt, but it's all a lot of work. But again, once you get used to it, it becomes really simple. So
I think, it's also the, if anybody's going to get into their own business as an entrepreneur, it's you can read all the things you want. You can look at all the videos, but until you do it and experience it, there's emotional highs, emotional lows, and you just gotta figure it out, and you hook up with people who have done it before, and away you go.
Away you go. Yeah, it's a ride. There's no doubt.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun actually. Once you get done with it, it's a lot of fun. It seems like there's times when you're like, "Why am I doing this?" But for the most part, when you get done and you've done something, you get done after X amount of time or whatever it is, you look back and you go, "Dang, I did that. That's my baby. I built that, or I did this, or I did that, and you look back with a huge amount of pride. You don't look back and go, wow, I slogged it through I went to the office every day for the past 30
got
years.
My gold watch, and here
I got
am.
a gold watch, and here I am. It's not like that. It's like, and then you start telling stories, and you've always got a million different stories. Even in their slight time that they've been in business, they've got some stories. They've got some stories already. We've got a ghost. That's a good story.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That's a good story. So, all right. Got anything else?
Larry, there's no French word for entrepreneur.
Parlez-vous français, Johnny? Let me ask you a question, Johnny. Yes.
Larry's pretty quick on the uptake there, folks. His hair's on fire. It went right over. Okay.
Johnny, did the spaceship land in your yard? Did you look at it? Did you take it apart? What did you do with it? That's my question.
The first time I took it apart, I can't take it apart anymore.
Well, they're actually, no, Johnny, come on. I was out there in the galaxy the other day when they took me away the last time. There is a sign hanging out there by the moon.
Who took you away? Is this a Seagram story, or who's that?
No, this is
Smirnoff.
This is not that, Johnny. This is an alien story. So the aliens took me up. I go out there, and there's a sign out there by the moon that says John's Fix-It Shop with an arrow pointed at your house.
That's it. That's it. Right? They taught me everything, Larry.
All right. Anyway, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, questions at handymanprosradioshow.com. We're at Handyman Pros on Facebook as well. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to reach out. Johnny, take us home.
All right, folks. Hope you enjoyed the interview. We certainly did. Have a great, safe week, and we'll see you next time on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.